Now, let's get to our featured speaker here. I know many of y'all know David already, but many of you may not have had an opportunity to meet him. I tell you, it's like I say, it's hard to get him to come to these meetings because his travel schedule is hard when you're going from Vail down to, the beach for a while, and then maybe go to Costa Rica, and, so he's trying to fit us lowlifes into the schedule, and I appreciate that. He is an absolutely wonderful gentleman, and the thing about him is, for what he has achieved in his short lifetime, he is willing to share and give back over and over and over again. I had him at a meeting last year. As soon as those that missed the meeting last year with him begged me to get him back. And I said, well, how am I going to do that? He doesn't like me that much. So he's back tonight. I'll tell you, he's got a magnificent story to tell. And he is a guy who is not afraid, which is why he's at where you're talking about a $60 million portfolio, $30 million in notes, $30 million in real estate. He is a magnificent business guy, but he's the most down-to-earth, humble guy you'll ever meet. I just want to say one thing. When we ended up our meeting last year, and we were over at our church at the time, he sat there after the meeting, after back then we had to put up all our chairs and pick up our equipment and everything. He stayed there for between an hour and a half, just talking to Mary and I on a very personal level. You don't find people of his caliber very often. And so I want to thank y'all for coming, and I know it's going to be a wonderful presentation, and I want y'all to give a good round of applause for David Buttross.
Can you guys hear me in the back of the room? Yeah. Okay, great. I'm not really good at doing two things at once. So I'm not a professional speaker, and it would be great if I could just impart a bunch of wisdom and give you a bunch of stories on how I've done real estate deals, but if I don't kind of give you a little bit of background on all the cool things that I've done, you might not listen as much. So I kind of feel bad talking about all this stuff that I've done, but I feel like if I don't, you might not listen as much. And one thing that I really want is people to listen and ask a bunch of questions and really get a lot out of this meeting tonight. One thing I like to say is kind of like everybody wants something from somebody. Everybody wants something from you, and you guys all want something from somebody. Every time your phone rings, you pick it up, and that person on the other end really wants something from you. And every time you answer that phone, you really think it's like the lottery, and someone's going to actually give you something, so you answer it. But it's always someone on the other end kind of asking you for something. And anyway, why is everybody here? And maybe if I could go around the room, maybe one person at each table can kind of say why they're here at this meeting. Anyone at this table?
I'd like to get more commercial real estate investment advice.
Advice on commercial real estate. You guys? I want to be financially free.
Just finished reading Long-Term Greedy, so I figured to get.
Yeah,
oh, awesome. Awesome. Thank you, thank you.
Looking to buy my first vacation rental.
Great.
Investment opportunities and looking for wisdom.
This table?
Travel more, have the funds.
We're trying to get like you, man.
Great, great, great. Well, a lot of times people go, how long have you been doing real estate? Is what they ask me. I go, it doesn't really matter how long you've been doing real estate, it's how much real estate have you done. So if you've been doing real estate for 100 years and you only do one deal a year, do you really know that much about real estate? So it's kind of like, how much real estate have you squeezed into the period of time you've been doing it? So I always say, how many deals have you done versus how long you've been doing real estate? And I'd probably say we've done probably 4,000 deals, maybe more. So we have a lot of experience, even though I'm only 46 years old. And so that's, kind of one of the things to think about. And a lot of people say, well, how are you able to buy all these houses? How did you get to where you are? You must have started with everything. You must have had rich parents, and you won the lottery, and you're able to do all this stuff because you started with everything. And people are like, yeah, no one really makes it on their own. And the truth is yes, I did start with everything. So I really can't take credit for kind of what I've accomplished. I did start with everything, and it made it a whole lot easier. I started with the mom and dad that stayed together, who really cared about me. They gave me everything I could ever ask for. God gave me a little higher than average IQ, and He gave me a work ethic, and that's something that you're born with. I didn't do anything. You know, like great athletes, you know, God gave them that ability. So I can't really take credit for that. So I had parents that gave me lots of guidance and lots of confidence and lots of advice, financial support growing up. I had God that gave me a good work ethic and a good head on my shoulders. And that's everything. You know, the people that are born with the trust fund, they don't know how to hold on to that money. And people who work hard for their money and they save every penny and they sacrifice for it, they can hold on to it. But the people who get rich quick, that money flows right through their fingers and they never hold on to it. The average person who wins the lottery is financially worse off 3 years after they win the lottery. The average person who inherits money from their parents, worse off 3 years. The average professional athlete who gets a big signing bonus, 3 years later, they're worse off. So people who get money easy, they don't hold on to it. So, you know, it's about making those right life choices. And in the long run, you'll really be able to do a whole lot more with yourself. Does that kind of make sense? You know, and it's about doing the right thing over and over and over and over again. I mean, yeah, I got rich quick. 30 years, 4,000 deals, one deal at a time. You know, there's no real shortcuts to doing it. And the people that do hit the lottery and they buy that one property and they make $1 million on it, and they ratchet up their lifestyle, and the real estate market turns around on them, they don't hold on to any of it. So the most important thing you can do is save your pennies, live within your means, but also go out there and try to do deals and kind of push the limits. You know, one of the first things I learned when I bought one of my very first pieces of real estate, I was in the closing attorney's office, and there was a realtor in the office. And he was making at the time about 30 grand a year, and he was comfortable at it. And I said, well, how many deals do you do? He goes, oh, I do 3 or 4 deals a year. And that's it. I go, how long have you been doing it? He goes, 40 years. And to him, all he wanted to do was do those 4 deals a year. And once he was covering his nut, you know, he was good to go and he went fishing. And I have to say that's probably true for everybody in this room, including myself. You get to that, you push yourself to get your head above water, because it's so hard to get your head above water. And once you get it there, you just rest, because it's so hard to get your head above water. And I found that happened to me over and over in my life. It's like, you know, how did I get to make 50 grand a year? You know, once I got to there, I couldn't push through that. Then I got to 100 grand a year. And I got stuck there. Then I got to $1 million a year. And I got stuck there. And you get stuck, you know, because you just get comfortable. You work so hard just to get your head above water, you get stuck. I mean, would you say that's true for most of the people in the room? You know? And so once you get unstuck, you're like, man, I always wanted that car. So you got that new car. Okay, I'm doing a little bit better. I always wanted that new house. And then all of a sudden, you know, and then you work a little bit harder just to get your head above water and you stop. You know, you start watching TV and doing a bunch of stuff that's not productive. You know, there's another real good book called Think and Grow Rich. And it's one of the things I always tell everyone. Someone asked me to read it 20 years ago or 30 years ago. They said, we'll give you a loan at our bank, but you got to read this book first. And that's one of the ways I kind of got started. I bought a bunch of houses. But, you know, being in my 20s, I couldn't get a loan from a bank. I didn't have regular income and stuff like that. So the bank called all my pieces of real estate a car loan. They put all my houses on a 5-year loan. You ever tried to pay off a house in 5 years? It keeps you broke. And I had about 50 of those loans at Compass Bank years ago. They put them all on 5-year AMs. So it's almost impossible to rent something for enough to cover your cash flow. So every month, I was having to work my tail off to cover my cash flow. But it kept me broke, but it's still a really, you know, good way to do it, because, you know, those deals I did 20 years ago still kind of support me nowadays, which is kind of great. And so basically what I started off doing was, years ago my dad started doing real estate. And his dad did real estate, and my great-granddad did real estate. But he was in the military, and he was able to rent houses in East Austin. And if I'd never seen him doing it, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. But he bought houses, back in 1981 in Austin, before the bust. And in 1987, 88, everybody who was anybody went under in real estate. And he was able to sell his houses before the bust, owner finance, get out of them. And one thing that I learned is, when you sell houses owner financed, as long as their payments are less than what it costs for rent, they're going to stay in your house. You know, if their payments are more than rent, they might say, well, forget this. We're going to leave this house. We're going to go rent a place next door. So I got started in real estate because of my dad. And so he helped me with the first deal, and we bought a non-qualifying assumable property. And we did that together, and then eventually I was able to buy one on my own, and then I bought a couple with my mom and dad. And you know, kind of one deal after another. And so when I was in my early 20s, I had about 50 properties. And one of my buddies, I guess, went through a divorce, and his wife made him a really good deal to settle. And so he offered me 50 more properties. So I was about 24, 25 years old. I had about 100 rent houses. And I thought I had it all figured out. I'm like, shoot, I got 100 rent houses, I'm gonna be rich. You know, all my houses, my payment's $400 a month, they rent for $500 a month. Life is great. You think you're gonna be making 10 grand a month, right? But that's not the case. Residential real estate is not designed to cash flow. Everybody thinks you can get rich in residential real estate, but you can't. So when you got a house, I wish I had a big old whiteboard or something up here.
Got
But
my shirt and use my bag.
but with residential real estate, you forget about it. You don't actually make that much money. You know, you have a house, well, you know, the first month's payment goes to your real estate commission, right, to pay someone to find you a tenant. The next 2 months go to pay your property taxes. So all of a sudden, even if you're 100% occupied, 30% of that money goes away. And you got another month for maintenance and another month that the property sits vacant, you know, because it takes you 30 days in between tenants. So all of a sudden, you got 5 months of doesn't cash flow. And then if you've got a big make ready, that could be 2 or 3 more months. So you're kind of lucky if 50% of the rental income from the rental property is there to pay debt service. And they don't ever teach you that in school. You know? Why don't one of you guys pitch me a real estate deal? Who buys and sells single family houses here? Okay, in the back. What's the last deal you did?
Last deal I did was in Onion Creek,
Okay,
Wild Dunes Drive, bought it for 125. On
Okay.
the market for 320.
so you bought it for 125 and sold it for 320.
I haven't sold it yet, just hit the market this week.
Oh, okay. Who's got one that they bought and sold recently? Yes, ma'am.
Purchased it for $197 and sold it for $306.
Okay, so she bought it for roughly 100 and sold it for 300. I mean, she bought it for 200 and sold it for 300. So how much do you think she made on that property? How much? 50,000? 20 grand. 30? I'm betting probably 30, but let's see.
I
So
think it was around 23.
23. And what happens is people go, wow, I can buy it for 200, I can sell it for 300, I'm gonna spend 20 fixing it up, I'm gonna make 80,000 bucks on the deal, right? And now, how did it work out? So you bought it for 100, how much did you, 200, how much did you put into it to fix it up?
It was more my husband than me, but I think we planned to spend $40,000, but we just had fun and got it up to like 65.
Okay.
It looks really good in our portfolio.
Okay. So she's got 265 in it. How long did it take you to sell it? After you bought it?
It was during the holidays, so it took about 18 days. But as soon as our first like open house is sold at open house.
Okay, so you sold it like 45 days after you bought it?
No, it was 18 days.
18 days after you bought it?
Oh, no. After we put it on.
Right,
video.
from the time, when did you buy it and when did you sell it?
I think it was like 4 months.
4 months. Okay, so she's got 265 in it. It probably cost her $2,500 a month to hold it. That's another 10,000. That's 275, right? And you sold it for 300. Did you have to pay a real estate agent a commission to sell it for you? So 6% real estate commission and closing costs is 8%. So it's another 25,000. So 300 minus 25,000 is 275, and she might have been in it for 275. Does that make sense?
Look good in the portfolio though.
So
We
what?
still made 23,000.
So she still made 23,000,
That's a lot
but
of money.
it is a lot of
But
money.
maybe not to everybody else.
So when you look at it though, if you're a real estate agent and you made a 6% commission on that, you would have made $18,000 on the sale with no risk. You would have made $12,000 on the purchase with no risk. You would have made $30,000 and had no money at risk. So one thing I encourage people to do is become real estate agents too. Because you can learn a lot more and you can do a lot more deals because everybody has cash as a limited supply. And once you do one deal, that's all you get to do. So how much experience do you get? It might take you 2 years to get the experience of buying and selling one house. But if you're a realtor, you get to buy and sell lots of houses and you get to actually see the numbers. So a lot of times people will buy a house for 200, sell for 300 and think they hit a home run. But there's so many things that they don't take into consideration as a transaction cost, just like rental real estate. So one thing you want to do is mentor with somebody in this room that's a little bit older, or maybe not older, someone who's got more deals than you, and ask them if you can help on those deals. You know, even if you help them out for free, you'll learn so much more, and you'll be able to kind of, when you see a buy, sell, and a fix up all in a 1 month period of time, you can understand it a lot better than when you buy it and you fix it and it takes you 6 months to get all that experience all at once. So if you're good at what you do, you're going to end up finding more deals than you have money. And if you have more deals than you have money, what do you do with all those extra deals? Well, if you're a real estate agent or a real estate broker, you can broker those deals and you have a lot bigger network. So if you're not an agent or a broker, work with one or consider getting your license. Because a lot of times you'll make a lot more money in real estate just getting brokerage commissions, and it takes all the risk out of it for you. The other thing is when you're buying and selling your own property, you'll save 3% on the purchase. So are you a real estate agent?
I'm on unit 2 of 12.
Okay. So as a real estate agent, she would have saved a 3% commission, which is $6,000, and she would have saved the listing fee, which is $9,000. So she would have saved $15,000 right there. And when you're doing, a bunch of deals a year over a lifetime, all those $9,000 add up to a lot of money. And you get to write off a lot of expenses as a real estate agent looking for deals and stuff like that. So that's something to kind of consider. Does anyone have any questions?
Are you a real estate agent?
I am a licensed real estate broker. I got my license when I was big. After my first year of college, I went to summer school, so I guess I was probably 18 or 19. I took 12 hours at ACC. They're easy A's. They count as electric credit going towards UT. So I took 2 classes, got my real estate license, then waited 2 years and got my broker's license. So I got my broker's license when I was 21. And I only thought about doing it because my mom and dad both had their real estate license. So it helps so much to have someone kind of show you the way. It's hard, it's really, really hard to find your way on your own, but if you have someone holding a light at the end of the tunnel, it's a lot easier to figure it out. So mentor with people, work with people, and do whatever you can to work with someone who's actually doing it, that's successful doing it. And what's going to happen is busy people are going to have so much to do, you're going to be able to make a fortune just off doing the stuff that they don't have time for. And they will be really, really thankful. One of the other things I have to say is, how do people make money? You basically make money by solving other people's problems. The bigger the problem you solve, the more money you make. So, and that's kind of why I'm here today. That's why a guy asked me to come speak. He's like, what are you doing this year? I go, well, I was going to retire. And then after taking 1 or 2 days off, I was like, that's not what I want to do. And he goes, well, why are we going to retire? I'm like, well, I just didn't feel challenged. And I started thinking, why didn't I feel challenged? Because I hit that little glass ceiling. I got enough money, I'm comfortable, and I couldn't really push through it. It's just hard to break through that ceiling. I've had 6 or 7 ceilings in my life. No matter how hard you do it, you just get stuck there and you just can't push through it. So I said, I'm doing this, and the only way to break through it is I've got to aim way up there. And so I was averaging 100 deals a year, buy 100, sell 100. Basically, you do a deal a day. I felt like that was cool. And to most people, that's like knocking out of the park. But that became my level, because I used to be doing 12 deals a year. I'm like, shoot, I'm buying and selling a deal a month. That's pretty dang good. And you get comfortable, and you don't really realize what you're really capable of. And so I'm like, well, shoot, I preach this to everybody. Why not just be ridiculous? I'm gonna do 1,000 deals this year. I just said it to the world. That's ridiculous. But when you say it, then you got 1,000 people or 5,000 friends on Facebook that are kind of holding you to it. And you don't want to look like a liar to everybody. So I said, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it. And I can control the outcome, because I can actually write the check for 1,000 houses. So I can actually control it. They don't have to be I didn't say there'd be 1,000 good deals. I didn't say I'd make 1,000 money. I didn't say I'd sell 1,000 houses either. But I said I'd do 1,000 deals. And actually I did that 3 years ago. I said I'm going to buy 1,000 properties. Ended up, towards the end of the year, I bought 1,000 lots all in one package in North Carolina. And that was an interesting deal. My wife made me go to California for the summer. And I'm like, what in the world am I going to do in Southern California? I had no idea what I'm going to do. I'm stuck here, bored out of my mind, chasing kids around, changing diapers, and going to the beach, just staring at the surf. I'm used to just, pounding it out at the office. So I ran into a friend of mine whose granddad started Walmart. And I said, well, what do you do with all your time? He goes, well, I got a big pile of money. All I got to do is give it away. And you would not believe how hard it is to give away money, according to my friend. So well, what do you give it to? He goes, I give it to this group, and I give it to this group, and I give it to this group, and I give it to this group. And I go, oh, that group's in Southern California. And I said, well, can I meet with them? So I met with them, and I go, well, what do you guys do? He goes, well, people give us money, and then we fix problems and solve problems with the money that they give us. And I said, well, do you have anything that anyone's giving you that you want to get rid of? And They go, well, we're on the West Coast, and someone gave us like this city on the East Coast, and we have no idea what to do with it. We've had it for 2 years. We've only sold 3 lots in it. We got all these liens and judgments and problems and woodpeckers and all this kind of stuff. We just want to get rid of it if we can. I said, I'll take it. They said, what are you going to do with it, Elvis? I have no idea. I go, it's in North Carolina called Boiling Springs Lakes. It's 2 miles from the beach. And I figured, they said, you can have it. I wrote them a small check. I assumed all the liability of the sewer liens and the woodpeckers and all this kind of stuff. But I found out it's by a nuclear power plant. And it's like really close. And then I also found out there's a brand new school they built next to it. I also found out that the U.S. government bought 600 acres right next door to it to have a deep water port for Wilmington, North Carolina, so they can get the ships in and out. Because have you heard of the Cape Fear River? They have to send the ships up the Cape Fear River. And anyway, so there's like so much going on there. So I felt like, you know what, I'll buy it and I'll figure it out. So I called up I bought it, and I called up the broker that's been selling lots out there for 60 years. And I called him up and said, well, hey, I just bought all 1,000 lots. You think you can help me sell them? He goes, you're darn right I can. I've been selling lots out here for 60 years. I go, well, how many lots did you sell last year? He goes, it was a great year. We sold 3 of them. So I started doing the math. Started doing the math. 1,000 lots, 3 a year, 333 years. I might be sitting on these lots for a little while. Might not have been the best idea in the world. So anyway, I said, I'm going to have to figure out something. This guy's been doing this for 60 years. He's very, very valuable. He's honest. He's hardworking. He's a good guy. I said, you know, it's 1,000 lots. Would you mind giving some of the listings away to some other people? Do you think that might help you sell the lots? He goes, of course, I don't mind doing it. And so I said, well, why don't you pick out 10 agents that you think would help you sell the lots, and I'll make sure I pay you on any of the lots that they sell also. So he set up a luncheon. I flew out there, met the 10 agents, gave each of them 10 listings. And within a month, we sold 30 lots. And so far, we sold 300 of them the first year, just by kind of shaking it up a little bit, getting a little bit of energy, and having the right people. So he knew everything about these lots, and these guys were all good sales agents, so they knew how to sell them. So kind of working together, we were able to move a bunch of lots in North Carolina. In the process, I found out I owned the dam. I owned the dam because I got the dam letter from the government that said, you have a dam and it's yours and you have to maintain it, and if you let any trees grow on it and it breaks and the city floods, you're responsible. It's like, oh man, what am I going to do with the dam? So I replied, I got your dam letter, thank you very much. I'm going to try really hard to fix everything there. I found it on a lake too. I didn't know you could own a lake, but apparently I own a lake because we own the land, and then when we built the dam, it flooded our land, and now we have a lake and a bunch of swampland. So I actually never thought I'd actually buy swampland, but I bought swampland. So I got a bunch of swampland, and I learned something called hardpan. I never knew what in the world hardpan was. Well, the reason why the city never took off is they don't have sewer lines running through the city, and so they built all these lots, and in order to put a septic system on the ground has to percolate. Well, in Florida and North Carolina, they have this stuff called hardpan, so 2 inches below the surface is like 6 inches of something so hard that the water won't go through it. So I end up with tons and tons of lots that I probably won't be able to sell because you can't put septic systems on there. But eventually I'll figure out that problem. It's going to be interesting and fun. But we've sold, I don't know, $1.5 million worth of stuff so in the last year. So it's you can do it. You just have to try, and that's kind of been my philosophy. Is I always like to jump into water over my head and just kind of figure it out. Otherwise, people just get comfortable, and they just don't, once they get comfortable, they stay comfortable, and they just won't, do that extra effort. And so my thing is, if I'm in water over my head, I don't have a choice. I'm either going to sink or swim. And my philosophy is, any deal is not going to break me, I want to do. So I look at the downside risk on it. If I don't think there's a lot of downside risk on it, then I'm going to kind of get out there and do it. If that makes any sense. But are there any questions?
Okay, if you're going to take any deal that just is doable, does that mean that you don't make a lot of profit on a lot of deals?
I make a lot of profit on almost everything I do. It's almost ridiculous. I really do. In all honesty, I've been doing this for so long. My numbers are actually really, really pretty good. But what I do is, so some people are really, really conservative and they can't afford to take a risk, and it's really a good thing. There might be reasons you've scrimped and saved so hard for those money, and you just can't afford to take the risk because, they always say, if you lose 50% on a deal, you have to make 100% just to get back to even, right? You know, so my investment criteria was, well, I never wanted to, you know, always look for the better deal, because a lot of people are always like, they're always trying to hit the lottery, and they're always like, well, there's gonna be a better deal, so I don't want to invest in this. I don't want to commit to this right now because there's gonna be a better deal. Well, my thing is I commit to everything. I have an investment criteria. Warren Buffett's like the richest man in the world, and he earned on average 20% on his money. And I felt like, you know, any deal I can do that earns 20%, I'm gonna do. If it's good enough for the richest man in the world, it's good enough for me. But a lot of people want to double their money. So my thing is, any deal that comes across my desk that I'm gonna make 20% on, I do it, and if I run out of money, I don't have to work for a little while. And that's kind of what I do. My job is to spend my money on investments, and then wait for them to work themselves out, and then get a pile of cash again, and then I start doing it again. So, I mean, I'll do almost anything as long as I get 20% on it, and then I'm kind of done. And if a better deal comes along, I just, you know, it came along, I didn't do it.
So in that time frame, you wait now to work that deal to let it pan out. Sometimes you need time for that.
Yeah.
If there is a unfortunate market issue in that time frame, do you hedge your housing in any way, or do you just wait it out until it recovers?
I just wait it out until it recovers. And so what was your first question again?
If you hedged it at all, like in anticipation, because sometimes, I mean, you've been in the market for a long time, and the housing market is pretty cyclical on crashes and stuff. I mean, certain areas are obviously more resilient than others, but, you know, do you like anticipate that coming? You're like, oh, maybe we should, you know, buy some hedging contracts somewhere to offset some of these losses, or?
So, unfortunately, my model is so simple, I don't have to be very bright to quite, you know, figure it out. So basically, I buy C property. You know, there's A property, which is big $1 million houses, and then you got B properties like the $300,000 to $500,000 houses, and there's like the C properties. They're like, you know, $75,000 to $150,000, and then the D properties like David, like me, they're like below that. But I kind of specialize in the C properties, and basically they're just ridiculously huge indicators. So what happens is, in a market cycle, what's the first stuff to go up and die? The worst stuff in the market, or the nicer stuff? The first thing to recover is the stuff that everybody wants, right? What's the first part to recover? The stuff everybody likes? Right. And so what happens is, so the market starts recovering, all the fancy properties, all the rich people get rich first, and so they're all spending their money first. So the fancy properties start going up in value. Then all of a sudden it starts trickling down, all the middle class people are, you know, start to make more money, and so all of a sudden those properties start picking up. And so all of a sudden the first year the great properties pick up, and 6 months later the B properties pick up, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I got an 18-month notice. A properties picked up, B properties picked up. What's going to pick up next? C property. So I got 18 months. So trying to figure out a market cycle isn't that hard. You know, if you're trying to time the high-end real estate market, yeah, you're gonna be clobbered. You buy a big expensive house, you're stuck. You got to hedge your bets. I keep it simple. I don't worry about any of that stuff. You know, markets go up and down. You do what you got to do. You do it every day, and in the long run, it's going to work out really, really well.
And I guess on your volume, like you're almost like dollar cost averaging in constantly into the market, so it's like
that's all smart people stuff.
That's stuff that, hey, you need to know about that stuff.
No, you're too smart. You're too smart.
I think you just naturally do it, man.
Drink a tequila shot. Don't worry about that. Don't buy A properties. You know why?
No, I get that.
Because what happens is, when you're stuck in an A property and the market turns down, you can't do anything except some smart guy stuff about hedging your bets. You can't fix it. You buy $1 million house and your payments are 10 grand a month and you rent it for 10 grand a month, that's great. But when the market goes down, it goes down to 6 grand a month, you can't go drive Uber long enough to cover your shortfall. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do. You just have to sit there and just watch your world fall apart. But if you buy low-end property, you can work your way out of the mess. You can work harder. You can put more of yourself into it, and you can will the deals into working. Does that kind of make sense? So I stay in like the lower-end property. So if I got a problem and the wheels fall off, I can get out there and I can work on my property and I can affect change on it. Does that kind of make sense?
No, it does, it's just on the flip side, I feel like what you're talking about is, when they rise and the big houses go up, on the flip side of that, the C properties will crash first and default first. in the
No.
market.
No, the guys at the top fall first.
Well, because that's kind of what happened for '08, you know,
No.
kind of like the collapse of
The big guys.
America's mortgage market collapsed.
Yeah, but it's the higher dollar stuff that crashed in the beginning. So what happens is so I got it.
Right.
So I've got an 18-month signal on when to buy my low-end properties. So I stay in the low end, everything goes up, I start buying my low-end stuff. And the thing is, you've got a whole year before the low-end stuff goes down. Because the low-end stuff, they're the last one to hear about everything. Does that kind of make sense? So the high-end stuff goes down, the middle range starts going down. So once I see the high-end stuff where it's hard for people to get loans and stuff on the high-end stuff, I'm like, maybe it's a good time to start liquidating my portfolio. So I got a 2-year notice. Does that make sense?
Oh,
so that's why I kind of focus on the lower end houses, and I kind of work. You got to work a lot harder, but you don't have to worry about the bubble bursting on you. Yes, sir.
Even on the C property, when A and B get hit, they all gotta live somewhere.
Right.
If they lose their house, guess where they're all moving?
Right.
All move it to D's and C's.
Right.
Believe me. So you're always safe there.
Right, that's what I believe. And so one of the things that I do is, I pay cash for houses and I sell them under finance. And the reason why the model works is there are this many houses out there that you can buy for cash, right? There are this many people that can get out there and buy it. And there are this many people out there that want owner financing, there are this many people that offer owner financing. So you're making money on supply and demand on the buy side, and you're making money on the sell side. And then the other thing that I learned from my dad is, when he sold his houses, for $50,000 or $60,000, say he sold it for $60,000, and their payments were $600 a month, and then the market collapsed, and those houses went down to being worth $40,000. Well, their payments were $600 a month. Rents were still $750 a month. So it made no sense for them to quit paying their mortgage payment to my dad and move out and pay a higher rent, and they kept their houses, and all the people that kept their houses, now they're worth $300,000. So in a higher end house, in $1 million house, the rents go from a $10,000 a month mortgage payment where you can move across the street for $6,000 a month. And you save $4,000 a month, you're still in the same neighborhood. So that's a lot of motivation, and your house went from being $1 million to $600,000. That's a lot of motivation to walk away and start over again. So that's the other reason why I like lower end real estate. Yes, sir?
Where do you get your leads? So like when you're doing six deals a year, 12 deals a year, where were you? How did you get your leads, and where were you finding where it's like wholesalers?
Well, at the time I thought I was pretty smart.
Okay.
It's because you don't know what you don't know. At the time my dad thought he was really smart. He was buying rent houses and he was making $50 a month positive cash flow. And back then he was. And it was great, and that's what we built our model on. It's just as you do it, what you always need to be doing is challenging yourself every day. How can I do it better? How can I do it better? How can I do it better? Because what happens is everyone gets to that ceiling where I'm going to do 12 deals a year, or I'm going to only do deals that I make $50 a month. So I just always started being, unreasonable and having ridiculous expectations. And
So were you finding your deals on the MLS? Were you finding them through
yeah, so
wholesalers?
back in the day they had this thing called the MLS book. And it was like a big old thick, looked like a phone book.
Yeah.
We call it the Real Estate Bible. And it would come out every 2 weeks, and it'd be like a little magazine and have like 16 properties or 9 properties per page, and have just a little picture with how much they're asking for. And so I worked in Dove Springs in Southeast Austin, and basically all I would do is I would get the book, and I'd look for the 5 least expensive houses or 10 least expensive houses in the neighborhood that day. I'd find the 10 least expensive houses, I'd write a contract on all 10 of them. And pretty much everybody told me to pound sand. And then, a week or 2 later, I do the exact same offer. They're like, well, why would we accept your offer? We didn't accept it before. But I was in college and I got a deal a month doing that. And I was able to buy, they'd ask 50 for it, I'd offer them 30, I'd buy them for 35, sell them owner finance for 55. And you do that a couple times a year as a college kid, and it's pretty good money. And that's all I did. I just made offers, lots of offers. And in a soft market, they always come around. I bought a building in Smithville the other day for half of what they were asking for. But I got it because I made an offer on it 10 years ago, and I didn't delete it, I didn't let go. So every 6 months, just press resend. Took 2 seconds. I got, F no, I'm not going to accept your offer after year 8. Hell no, F no, whatever. 10 years later, I get an email around Christmas time from him. He goes, my guy really wants to sell and he wants to close before the end of the year. Can you close in 4 days? I'm like, are you kidding me? 4 days? Of course I can. So I closed it on December 29th. I got a 50,000 square foot building for half of what they were asking for, and I've got it sold for a little bit more than he was asking for it by cutting it up and selling one half to one guy and one half to the other guy. So it's just being persistent. And I think I read somewhere recently, 80% of all sales are made by follow-up number 3 through 10. So most deals are closed by following up. And I don't know if I said this earlier, but what's the secret to making money? It's solving somebody else's problem. And the bigger the problem you solve, the more money you're going to make. So, if you're hungry and you want a hamburger, there are a bunch of people that offer you hamburgers. You're going to make $1 selling somebody a hamburger, right? If you've got a $32 million Learjet for sale, how many people can solve that problem? And you need to dump it. Whoever can figure out how to solve that problem is going to make a whole bunch of money. So my thing is, you got to solve other people's problems. The richer the person is that's got the problem, the more money you're going to make solving it for them. Does that kind of make sense? Yes, sir?
So, the business model that you have, though, what are the 3 biggest challenges that you have encountered, and how have you been able to mitigate and overcome these challenges?
My biggest problem is organization and focus. And it's not that I'm not focused, it's that I'm focused on so many different things. Does that make sense? So, it's like you can do anything you want, you just can't do everything. And I try to do everything all the time. And so sometimes getting up here and speaking is something that's really good for me. You guys say, well, what is it? I said, everybody wants something from you, and you all want something from everybody else. That's what I want from you guys. If I get out and I talk about stuff, it kind of holds me accountable for the advice that I'm giving. Because they always say those who do, and those who don't teach. All those guys that do seminars, and the rich dad, poor dad guy that used to buy stuff from us, he's been bankrupt so many times, he's lost his butt on almost every real estate deal he's ever done. He makes his money by teaching. And so that's why I'm not a public speaker, and I don't do the real estate network deal and all that, because I don't want to stop doing what I'd love to do, which is actually turning renters into homeowners. Yes, sir?
You've been doing this for a while, so are you funding your own deals 100% of the time? Do you have outside funding of any sort?
No, I did a lot of deals with my dad for years and years and years. And then once your business gets to a certain size, your overhead does start to eat up a ton of your profits. So we used to do deals where he'd put up the cash and would split the profits 50-50, which was a really fair way to do it. And then eventually got to the point where my overhead was exceeding 50% of my profits. So it wouldn't be, and I didn't feel like I ran a really tight ship, so I felt like it wouldn't be fair to kind of have him absorb my inefficient overhead. So I basically do almost everything myself. I might do a few things with my dad or my little sister or something, but 90% of what I do is all my own money, which I really recommend. You're better off doing fewer deals with your own money and cherry picking them and doing better deals. I've had people offer me $100 million to go do deals with, and the problem is right now I get to look at $100 million worth of deals and do the top $20 million worth of deals. If I got $100 million, then I got to do all $100 million worth of deals that I do, and right now I'm taking the cream off the crop, and I've got the rest of them I just don't worry about. So I found like you actually make more money doing fewer deals with bigger margins. And if you take other people's money and you get partners and stuff, you end up with a lot smaller margins. Yes, sir?
I wonder if you take this minute, I meant to do it earlier, because I think it's so awesome that your dad's here. Would you mind introducing him?
Oh.
The man who taught you everything?
This is my dad. Here, stand up, Dad.
It's pretty awesome that he's here tonight to support you still, and that's fantastic.
He does, and I can't tell you how many times I've called him on January 30th for property tax time, and I have to pay a 7% penalty that I borrowed money from him. And I think this might be the first year I didn't borrow money from him at property taxes. So property taxes in Austin are like, over $1 million a year is what I pay property taxes. And so I like to spend all my money on deals, because when I spend all my money, I get to quit working. And so, yeah, January 31st rolls around every year, and I think I'm knocking out of the park in December when I got $1 million in my checking account, and then I find out I owe $1.3 million in property taxes. I'm like, hey Dad, do you want to make a quick 1%? And so we'll swipe the credit card, we'll borrow some money here and there. And I think it was the last year or the year before. Maybe, yeah, so 2015 I even borrowed money from him. I think $250,000 in 2015. So, yeah.
In Austin, we've been making a lot of good offers, or like 70%, 75% offers, and we get outbid like every time. So I guess my husband last night was like, I give up, and I was like, no, we're not giving up. But I'm curious if we should go outside of Austin. Like, keep making offers?
What does your husband do for a living?
He's a software developer.
Okay.
So this is just like his dream to get out of the working man, thing.
Yeah, he makes good money being a software developer.
Yeah.
I mean, he makes money. Like my deals, my money makes me money. But he makes so much money doing that, he would have to have $3-4 million net worth to generate enough free cash flow to equal what his pay is. So he should definitely stay focused on software development. If he's interested in real estate, he should focus on software development in the real estate industry. And when he does that, he'll figure out a niche in real estate. But sometimes not doing a deal is the best deal you can do.
Yeah, well, we've been not doing a lot of deals.
That's smart. No. That's a good thing. I mean, I've bought 300 houses in the last 3 months, and none of them have been in Austin.
Okay.
I get out of the market normally 2 years ahead of time, and it's so frustrating watching all my friends get rich and brag about how much money they're making doing deals. And unfortunately, I don't time the market. We'll always get out years too early. But yeah, it's better than late. And sometimes when it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. And my whole model is, I only want to do a win-win deal. I hardly ever buy. 99% of the stuff I buy is never from a person. I don't really want to get a good deal from a person that just has to dump something. I'll do it from a bank, a big lender, something like that, but I try not to buy from people. And so my model is I buy it for cash and I sell it under finance. So I'm kind of partners with that person for the next 30 years. And if I sell somebody a property and they lose money on it, I get it back. I don't want it back. I want someone to buy a property from me and tell everybody how smart they are because they made money on the house that they bought from me. Does that kind of make sense? So our model is, you can sell somebody anything. You can take advantage of people all day long. And there's lots of ways to get rich quick. And that's what my book's about. It's called Long-Term Greedy. It's about doing the right thing the right way, and in the long run it pays off a lot better. So say I sell somebody a house for $120,000, it's worth 90 grand. And I owner finance it to them. And they realize their friend bought their house for 90, and the guy on the other side bought their house for 90. Every time they write that check to me for $1,000 a month, they curse me. Like, God dang it, I feel so stupid I bought that house from Mr. Buttross for 120 grand. They won't tell any of their friends that. They're going to have their head down low, and they're going to be like, are you going to tell your friend that you got ripped off, that you paid too much for a house? And the one chance you have after 4 years of making that payment to stick it to the guy that charged you too much, you're going to stick it to him. And it's just like bad karma. So what we've done is we sell people houses where their payments are less than rent. So like, yeah, I pay $600 a month for my mortgage payment from Mr. Buttross. What are you paying? They go, oh, $900 a month. Oh, and you don't even own your house? So this guy feels proud of himself. And I sell my house for $40, but then they go and they paint and they carpet it, and they actually do the improvements. And once they move into it and they do the little bitty fix-ups, it costs them a couple $1,000. That $40,000, our house is worth $70,000 or $80,000. So then they got a lot of pride and they go, yeah, you bought your house for 80, I bought mine for 40 grand from Mr. Buttross. And they start singing my praises because it makes them look smart. And so it's lots of goodwill. They tell all their friends about me, and that's how you build a reputation and build a business. So in Austin, I haven't been able to do this in the last few years because I can't look somebody in the eye and give them a good, feel like I'm giving them a good value. Plus my interest rates are like 7 or 8% and the bank rates are 4%. And I can't compete with that. So I always want to do a deal that's a win-win deal, and I can't do a win-win deal in Austin right now. So I just don't. When the market turned in 07, 08, I was on the courthouse steps and I was probably the biggest buyer on the courthouse steps. I probably bought more every month than the whole other group combined. And so I did that 08, 09, 2010, 2011, part of 2012 maybe. And then for 3 or 4 years, I don't think I've been down to the courthouse steps once. So sometimes you just don't do it. Work on software development, get your real estate license like you're doing, learn the business, learn everything you can over the next couple of years, take discount listings, do whatever, and then once you get really busy, then you charge more for your listing services. Then you're going to be ready when the market turns to pick up lots of good deals. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you have a question, ma'am?
Question.
Yes, ma'am.
If you had a crystal ball, where do you think the market is headed next?
So when I was younger, I knew everything. I really did. I could sit there with so much confidence, I could say, this is what's going to happen. I tell my dad, Dad, I'm so sure I know exactly what's going to happen. Yes, 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 this is going to happen, this is going to happen. I have no clue anymore. I can argue that prices are going to go through the roof. I can argue that prices are going to drop like a rock. I can tell you where we are right now. I can give you reasons for both. The U.S. government's got so much debt, we'll never be able to pay it off. If interest rates go up even a fraction, we're bankrupt, we can't even service our debt. So I think the whole economy in the world is just totally manipulated, and I think what we have is a giant credit contraction. And all the things the government does to help people, the byproduct is hurting people. There are no homeowners at the low end because of Dodd-Frank, and they've made it almost a felony to sell someone a house that if you can't prove that they have the ability to pay you back in 5 years. So what's happened now, no one can get loans. Banks won't do loans. I'm on the board of a bank, and we don't even do consumer lending anymore. So when the government did to try to protect everybody, has just like shrunk, contracted credit, and so poor people can't buy houses. So what happens? It means there's no value in the cheap houses. They've all dropped like a rock, and that's where I am. I'm buying tons and tons of cheap houses, and banks are lending money at 3%. Well, a house for $30,000 at 3% is $900 a year in interest. That's $75 a month. You know, what bank wants to service a loan for $75 a month and have all the liability of it? So now the banks won't lend on anything under 50 grand. And so as soon as the property goes to being worth less than 50,000, it drops from 50,000 to 25,000 like that. And then the banks can't sell it. Because who in the world can buy a $25,000 house? No poor person can, because you can't get a loan, and a poor person doesn't have 25 grand in cash. And a rich person lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, New York City, Austin, Texas. They don't live in that small town. There are no rich people left in all the small towns. So all those little houses, the banks are stuck with. And that's kind of where my business is. I'm buying all those little houses in all those little small towns for cash, for nothing from the banks. I'm offering owner financing where, you know, they rent for $800 a month. Someone can buy it for $50 and have a $400 a month payment. And that house is worth $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in a healthy market when everyone has access to credit. So what we have in America is a huge credit contraction. And so what you're seeing is certain assets, because banks want to do bigger deals. I called a bank and said, look, I was thinking about, you know, I don't borrow money, but I was thinking about getting a $50 million line of credit to do something. He goes, you know that we just can't do it. We can't make enough money on a $50 million line, but if you want a $200 million line, we'll be glad to give it to you. I know it sounds crazy, but that's where it is. So if the guy makes half a point on a $50 million line, he's making $250,000 or something on it, and that's like what it costs to live in New York City. So what's happening is the high-priced assets, the stuff that everybody wants with free money, is going through the roof, and it's so overvalued, and stuff's going for $2,000 a square foot that used to go for $300 or $400 a square foot. And it's only doing that because the government has no one to lend the money to. I just got a loan on my house for 2% interest. I mean, it's crazy. It's a $2 million loan is $40,000 a year. And so the people that can borrow the money, it's taking those assets are crazy overvalued, and when it collapses, it's going to collapse big time. And what I believe is going to happen when it collapses is we're going to have crazy, crazy inflation because the government's not going to be able to service the debt. They're not going to be able to tax people enough to service the debt. So I think they're going to end up having to pump tons and tons of dollars into the economy like they did this last time to support the value of those higher end properties. And it's not so much that they care about the real estate market collapsing. They care about the tax revenue for all the government bonds and the city bonds collapsing in that market. So the real estate market's like 10 or 100 times the size of the stock market, and the government bond market's like 10 times the size of the real estate market. So it's going to be a crazy thing when the house of cards that we're living in falls, but I think we'll see some sort of hyperinflation. And so that's what I'm doing is the low-end real estate. So the government's going to try to stabilize the high-end stuff so it doesn't drop like a rock, and you'll see all the low-end stuff could go up by 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times. And that's my bet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What markets do you like to buy in, and also are you finding these deals on MLS or straight to the banks? Or?
You know, I just have a couple of big banks that contact me, and they have a handful of bidders in the country. And actually, I speak at these big national conventions for these big REITs that have been buying. Like one of the REITs bought like 100,000 single-family rentals and stuff. And so what happens is, and that's an interesting story. So what happened in the last real estate crash? All the liquidity dried up. The banks wouldn't lend anyone money, and no one had money to buy houses in these little bitty towns. So they basically gave them away. So these big REITs, you know, got together and they raised Blackstone and BlackRock and those guys. They all raised hundreds of millions of billions of dollars, and they bought all the little bitty cheap houses in America. And they're like, this is a great model. We're buying houses for $50,000. They rent for $750. We're getting 7-8% return on our money. Everyone else is getting 1%. We're geniuses. And then they went out and they started buying $100,000 houses. And then, so they buy $100,000 house, it rents for $1,000 a month. Well, we're making $200 a month more. We're geniuses. And they got so much money to place, they couldn't place it in little bitty houses because there's just too much brain damage. So now they got the idea of buying $100,000 houses, they could buy $200,000 houses. We get $600 more in rent. Our cost of capital is only $200 a month that we get free money because we're, you know, big institutions. And they look like even more geniuses. And the tricky thing that they did is they're buying houses and they're over improving them so they have no expenses for the first 3 years for maintenance like normal people do. So they way overpaid in expenses, but they bought them 2 or 3 years and the shareholders didn't know it, so they could dump all their stock at these high prices. And so I've been at these conventions preaching that these guys are doing the wrong stuff. And I was on a panel with a guy that just, a $6 billion company just merged with a $1.5 billion company. And I told them how smart they were. And then they said, well, why are you guys here? And I said, because I think 85% of you in this room are going to lose your butts in real estate. And they go, what about the other 15%? I said, you're going to totally get annihilated. And that billionaire guy, he was so pissed off at me. He's like, who the hell are you? I've got $6 billion worth of real estate. All you got is $60 million. How are you even on the same panel with me? What experience do you have? I go, what experience do you have, sir? Because I'm one of the founders of the REIT industry. I've been doing it for 5 years. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, sir. How many rent houses do you own in your name personally? He got real quiet. None. I go, how many have you bought in your entire life? Got real quiet. None. And I said, well, let me tell you who I am. I mean, I've been doing this for 30 years. I bought and sold over 3,000 houses, and I got my hands dirty for years and years and years doing it. And everyone in the audience got really, really quiet. And what's going to happen is, once those REIT stocks start collapsing, you're going to see millions of single-family houses flood the market, and there's going to be no safety net and no one to buy them. And so that's why I've been going to those conferences, because I told them that they're going to be giving me all their houses for free. They're going to beg me to take them off their books. So it's really, really, when you ask, you know, on a macro level, that's what I think. And, you know, maybe now's not the time to jump in, but we've had, we had 7 years, 8 years of a bull market. Yeah. One of the longest bull markets ever. You know, it's about time for the bubble to maybe, you know, so be really, really careful on your real estate purchases. Be really, really careful on your leverage. You know, one thing that the government's doing is they're pushing everybody. You're probably seeing commercials from the government that says, refinance your house, get your long-term loans because they know it's on the horizon. So if you can lock in your $300,000 mortgage at 3% and you're set for 10 years and your house goes down to $150,000, well, you're not going to move, you're not going to walk away because you still have a $1,200 a month mortgage payment that you can afford to keep. And it's going to trap everybody in their houses with that low interest rate. Well, it's a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because how nice would it be if you didn't own a $300,000 house when the market collapses? So I think that's why the government is pushing the free money and trying to get everyone to refinance, so when we have the next correction, everyone's going to be able to weather the storm a little better. That's what I think. Yes, sir?
David, I want to ask you about Dodd-Frank and owner financing, because we specialize in owner financing. So I tried to read up on it. I talked to two different lawyers. They give me different scenarios. And one said you can do a 5-year balloon, and another one said you can't do a 5-year balloon. You have to give them interest rate that goes like 8%, 9%, 10%, 11%, and then that forces them to cash you out. So I really don't know what the truth is on it. I'm getting different.
What attorneys do you talk to? Which ones?
There was a guy named Scott Horn in Dallas, and another guy named Matthew Coward in San Antonio.
Yeah, I believe that, and so one of the new laws with Dodd-Frank is you have to be a licensed mortgage originator, because if you're owner financing something, you're actually originating a mortgage. But one school of thought says that if you're only doing 5 a year, you can do 5 a year without being a licensed mortgage originator. On my loans, I don't ever give anyone a balloon. I don't want anyone, I want to protect myself from myself to be ethical too. You know, what if I give someone a 5-year balloon and they owe me 50 grand and their house is worth 100? You know, I might be tempted to go ahead and just foreclose on them, take the house and make that spread. I don't want that temptation. So the other thing too is people might walk away, you know, because they're embarrassed to tell you, hey, I can't get a loan to refinance my house, and just walk away. And I don't want that to happen either. So that's what I do on my loans is, in the past I would be like 8% for 5 years, then year 5 through 10 goes up to 9%, 10 through 15, 10%, it stays at 10% forever. And so that's kind of how I do that. So and the thing is, 5 years from now, the houses I buy, they're so cheap and the payments are so small. You know, 2% increase is $65 a month. And 5 years down the road, everyone, not everyone, but almost everyone can afford $65 a month. So I always give everyone a 30-year loan. When I was younger, I was afraid to do loans, but I read somewhere that something like 93 or 4% of all mortgages get paid off within 7 years. So I felt like, go ahead and just give everybody a 30-year loan. I'm 93% confident that I'm going to get totally paid off in 7 years, and the ones that don't pay off, you know, that's fine. It's like diversifying and having your money in a savings account, and there's so much equity in that mortgage. I don't worry about it. But I try to give everyone a 30-year loan, because I don't want to be tempted to ever do the wrong thing. So I try to like protect myself from myself. Yes, sir?
So are you a mortgage originator?
I'm a licensed mortgage originator. I have no clue what I'm doing. But I took the national exam. I missed one on that. I'm a good test taker, but I don't, you know, the people that live and breathe it really know what they're doing. And the mortgage brokers don't know what they're doing. The mortgage processors know everything. They don't get any credit. But those are the real brains behind the operation of the loan processors. But I'm a licensed mortgage originator, yes. Any other questions? But so Dodd-Frank is, the intent was good, was to protect borrowers from unscrupulous lenders. But the byproduct is people are afraid to lend money to people.
Would you say it's almost like restricting people coming in, like new workers, like new real estate agents, brokers, because like the bar to entry and like the rules and regulations are just very, almost open-ended and very, like you were saying earlier, they're just trying to squeeze, you know, everybody as much as they can and make it harder. I don't really think Dodd-Frank was to make it like safer for the investors. You know, banks never really cared about that much, but that's why that's really cool that you don't do balloons and stuff and you just do 30 years. That's pretty awesome gig there, but yeah, no, what do you think about that?
I mean, I think every regulation that the government has makes it harder for business to happen.
Totally.
The intent is good. When the unions came out, those were great. You know, the workers work harder. They should get a bigger piece of the pie. And they always say, you know, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, first the capitalists took advantage of all the working people and they squeezed them and squeezed them and squeezed them. When the union started, it was a good thing, and they increased productivity, they improved worker conditions, and everybody kind of benefited from it. Then the unions got so strong that they were able to squeeze the guys on the other end, and they were able to push their salaries up so high, and productivity didn't keep up with the unions, and that's kind of hurt some stuff. So everything starts off the right way, and it kind of evolves a little bit. So, you know, the pendulum kind of swings back and forth.
Yeah, my father's he's been a real estate agent for a long time, for about 40 years. And I had asked him about that, because I was very curious into getting into it, and he was kind of like, not steering me away from it, but he was definitely like, you know, it's very different now than when I did it 5-10 years ago.
Yeah,
so I just wonder if you kind of have that same feeling as like what he's describing and not probably relaying to me as good as he could.
Yeah, and I used to think the government was the cause of all the regulation, and now I kind of think it's more the big business is the cause of all the regulation, because once you're there, you want to like solidify where you are. So once you're a real estate broker like I am, I want to make it as hard as possible for everyone else to become a real estate broker. It keeps away my competition. But I think the people that are doing it are the ones that are already real estate brokers and want to make it harder and harder and harder.
using, I think the term is regulatory capture, like the companies
Yeah.
capture the regulators to squash out their competition.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
And that's why, small banks won't, I think you have to be around $300 million now for a small bank to be profitable, just because of all the regulatory and compliance stuff. And Liberdot Bank, the bank that I was on the board of, they don't even do any consumer lending because they just can't afford the compliance and the price you have to pay for not getting it done right. And that's kind of, I think, the big problem. They need to, what they've done is they've made the penalty so high that people are just all afraid to do it. And what they should do is they said, look, if your heart's in the right place and you messed up, you write a small check, and they just need to enforce all the rules on everybody all the time. Just like speeding tickets. Everybody hates getting a speeding ticket. Well, it's because you hate it because you sped 100 times in a row and then you just got caught. And that's why you get so mad. You're like, I did this every day and I got caught. But, if you got a ticket every time you sped, you just wouldn't speed. Or you know what the rules are. And the other thing is, they don't really tell you the rules. You call the IRS and say, what are you allowed to do? And they don't ever give you an answer. You call the regulators, and they won't ever give you an answer in the right. Say, can I do this? They won't say yes or no. And you can ask two different attorneys, like you said, and one will give you one answer and one will give you another answer.
Yeah, on what you're talking about, bank, or the market in kind of a wobbly place right now. Bank of America, and I can't remember somebody else just on that point, are now doing mortgage loans with only 3% down. So,
and that's
kind of an eerie reminder, I feel like.
Yeah, but they're probably not lending their money. They're probably going, it's probably some government guaranteed program.
That's definitely the case.
And it's scary, but it's so hard to qualify. Like, I bought a car and I borrowed the money at 1%. Someone else in my office tried to borrow a car, it was 15%. And I'm driving, a really fancy car and I have the same payment as someone that wasn't driving a fancy car. And it's just, it's all kind of complicated.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am?
Yeah.
I was going to ask your opinion on the Bank of America 3% down thing. I mean, you have to have good credit. It has to be a loan that I think is no more than low 400s. But I was going to see what you thought about that, and if you thought that would, other banks will follow in their footsteps, or if it would kind of affect the way you want to finance your deals.
It does affect me. I can't compete in the Austin market. I can't, I don't want to do a deal unless everybody wins. And I can't lend somebody money at 8% when they can borrow money from the bank at 4%. So it's kind of forced me to go lower and lower and lower value properties. And no one can compete with 3% money. I mean, the bank that lent me money at 2% on my house is like ridiculous. Like, are you kidding me? 2%? My friend lives in London, and their real estate market's through the roof, $2,000 a square foot. His mortgage on his house is 0.75%. He has $1 million loan. He pays like $600 a month on it. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So it's like, it's free money for the people that don't need free money, and no one else can get access to capital. And I think you're going to see the pendulum swing, and I think those guys are going to get hammered. And if they don't get hammered, the government's going to have to flood the economy with so much capital that the low-end property is going to go through the roof, and you're going to see wages rise a bunch. That's just my philosophy, and that's why I buy. I've always focused on buying stuff way below replacement cost. There's not as much downside on it, and I feel like there's a lot more upside. It's not as exciting, but that's kind of what I do. Yes, sir?
Can you let us know what towns or what areas you're buying in?
I get a list of 1,000 properties a month, and I bid the whole list, and it's just kind of wherever I get them. I've accumulated 20, 30 in Detroit, about 20 in Memphis, and I'm buying on all these little bitty small towns. And I've sold almost everything I got except for my Detroit and Memphis stuff. So it seems like a good deal, but I still haven't made any money doing it. And I think people for about 50 years haven't made money in Detroit or Memphis. And the biggest thing is jobs. And the EPA, and you've got all the factory towns. They're never going to come back because you've got these big factories, and no one can afford. The big business can't afford to take the risk to move into the factory and open the doors because of the environmental issues in the factory. They could end up with a $500 million judgment against them. So until the government can relax those a little bit so that you can put businesses in those old factories, then you can hire people, in the town, and those towns are all going to come back. But without jobs, you're just not going to see anything. You know, and a national minimum wage is a crazy thing too. You know, it's just ridiculous. Yes, Seattle, Washington needs to have a $15 an hour minimum wage. New York City needs a $15 an hour minimum wage. Austin, Texas needs an $11 an hour minimum wage. Detroit, you almost need to get rid of minimum wage. Seriously, make it 0, then everyone's going to get a job, and then you take your paycheck that's below $10 an hour to the government and then have them match it to bring people up to a certain level until the economy turns around. So I mean, you can't really do a national minimum wage. I think they are right by picking certain cities and making a minimum wage, because it's just, you know, in Austin you can't live on $10 an hour in Austin.
It definitely should be regional.
It needs to be regional, yeah.
For sure. What do you think about negative interest rates?
They have them.
Mortgage, well, when they come maybe more bona fide here, what do you think that will have an impact, how that impacts, do you think, mortgages and rates and everything?
Well, I mean, in a sense, you already have negative interest rates.
Yeah.
Because when you have to look at inflation, if your inflation exceeds your interest rate, that's more of a negative interest rate than...
Yeah, I guess that's what I was saying, like a real one. Because some countries, like 6 European countries, like have bona fide, you know, negative interest rates, you know, just at their bank rates. So.
Yeah, it's crazy because everyone knows that in the near future that your dollar's going to be able to buy you more stuff. And then they're going to trick everybody and have crazy inflation and make the dollar worth nothing. Like the dollar should have collapsed. And it's just, I don't know what's going on, but it's working out really good for the U.S. You know, oil's collapsed for, you know, no reason. All the natural resources have collapsed. You know, we got more people. So it tells you that what we've really done in the last 8 years have gone into the biggest depression that has ever hit the world. And the government's been masking it with the fiat currency by just printing dollars so no one really notices what's happened. And it's really kind of crazy. So it's good to have some assets that can generate revenue. But real estate can have negative value. You can own real estate. I own a building in San Angelo. I lose $7,000 a month on it. I've had it for 8 years. So what is that worth? What's something that costs you $7,000 a month? It's got a negative $1 million value. You know, and I thought I got a good deal when I bought it. So I mean, just buying real estate doesn't mean it cash flows. Doesn't mean it has positive value. So you can own pieces of real estate that have a negative value. I bought a lot of stuff for $1 a square foot. I thought I was getting a good deal, and I paid too much. You know?
Also, once you get as large as many properties as you have, sometimes it's good to have some write-offs.
No.
No.
You're like the smartest guy in the room, but you just said the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You should buy it. It's a good tax write-off. No, a tax write-off means you lost money on it.
Just bought a losing. It was a losing company for more than its value for because he needed to offset income.
No, he didn't.
Makes money.
No, he didn't.
That's,
no, losing money.
From my impression, that's why.
Losing money is never good. Losing money is bad. People say, "Oh, give money to charity. You're getting a tax write-off." No, people who write a check to a nonprofit wrote a check to a nonprofit, and some people think, "Oh, they just did it to get a tax write-off. That rich guy just gave the money to charity to get a tax write-off." No. They took their hard-earned money and they gave it away.
I totally agree with that in principle, but there are funny banking laws, I feel like, that where that might help.
Yeah, there are some things like that, like life insurance.
That's beyond my
scope,
yeah.
It makes sense to buy like a life insurance policy because of the tax hedge. Okay. And so yeah, you can say that's a dumb idea, but it makes sense because of the tax consequences. And that's what I'd like to see them get, you know, lower the tax rate, get rid of all the loopholes for the rich. Give something that's really, really simple, and people can do good business. They don't say, hey, we're going to go do this deal that loses money so we can get a tax benefit for it. You know what I mean? And yeah, losing money is not a good idea. But I have bought properties that didn't cash flow that were a good idea, but because of, like I bought a place in Fort Worth and I made $1 million on it. And it was because they signed a 30-year lease on the property, and we're 25 years into the lease, so they didn't have escalations. So they had this place rented way, way, way below market. No one wants to buy a place that rents for $5 grand a month when they're $8 grand a month of expenses. So I bought the thing for almost nothing, and yes, I was losing $3,000 a month on it. But I knew when the lease came up in 5 years, instead of getting $5,000 a month, I'll be getting $20,000 a month. So, but that asset was there and the value was there. I was just able to get a good deal on it because it wasn't cash flowing in the short term. So sometimes it is a good idea to buy something that doesn't cash flow. But just because you own a piece of real estate doesn't mean it's a good investment. I mean, it can sink you. And a good deal can sink you. Too many deals can sink you. So you want to make sure that you don't go off and buy. You know, if you go buy one rent house and you're losing $300 a month, that's fine. But you can't buy, you know, 100 good deals and have them all empty. because the expenses, the maintenance expenses and the cash flow could crush you. And you could have a huge positive net worth and still get crushed if you don't have the cash flow to cover your expenses. So you gotta be really careful about that. That's why you wanna get a broker's license so you can flip those deals to somebody else and maybe not make quite as much on it. Yes, sir?
You started out, you already had the money. What about, say, somebody new coming into real estate? What do you recommend they do to bootstrap themselves up?
Okay. Well, I started off, I was cutting yards. And I cut 50 yards a week, and I sold candy. And in high school, I saved $30,000. And I had guidance. And so I invested my money along with my dad, and I bought a house with him. So, I mean, I started with zero. I mean, you know what I mean? So you can start with $5,000, $10,000. You know, but real estate, you know, what you need to do is you take your cash, and the best place to put your cash is in yourself and make yourself as profitable as possible. Get yourself a new computer, get yourself a new haircut, get yourself trim and fit and exercise. And invest, if you only have $5,000, real estate might not be the best place to put that $5,000. You want to put that $5,000 into yourself, into education, and making you the best you can be. And then you can compete at a higher level. And then you'll make more money. And does that make sense? But if you don't have that much capital, you know, you're better off finding some of, there are tons and tons of rich doctors with $1 million in the bank earning 0% interest. Find a good deal. You find a good deal, you'll be able to flip that contract. And that's one thing I did too when I didn't have any money. I put a bunch of stuff under contract, long-term feasibility period. I pay a couple $100 a month to tie it up, and I can sell the contract to somebody. So you can do a deal that way without actually having to own the property, but you get the rights to the property. And a 30-day feasibility is really fair. So what I would do is I'd ask for a 120-day feasibility period. But if they're taking the property off the market, say it's a $100,000 property, say I'll give you a $300 option fee for the first month. If I flick, you keep my $300. And then the next month I'll give you $500. The next month I'll give you $750. The next month I'll give you $1,000. That way they know that you're committed to it. And if I had a property that's having a hard time selling, and I knew that someone was going to pay me as much as it cost me to hold the property, God bless them, tie me up as long as you want. Do a lease with an option to buy. I'm happy to do that because you solved my problem, and I'm happy with that number, $80,000, even if it's worth $100. Does that make sense? So that's what I would do. Don't buy it. Put her in a contract, do a lease with an option to buy, the ability to sublet it, be upfront and honest and tell them what you're going to do. People will like it. When I was younger and I'd buy a house for 30 and sell it for 50, you know, I'm a real estate broker, so I can't do anything that's not ethical. So I'd say, look, I want to buy your place for 30, I'm going to sell it for 50. And this is what I got to do to get 50 for it. I have to paint it, carpet it, fix it, market it, find another buyer, and I have to own or finance it, and wait 30 years to get paid. Do you think that's a fair return? And I showed them all the money I'm going to make. I'm going to make $7,500 on this deal after my expenses are over, and I got to wait 30 years to do it. Are you okay with it? And they say, yeah. You know, they go, that's a lot of work, and they don't want to wait 30 years to make that extra $7,500. So I'm a big fan of if you put your cards on the table, it's so much easier, and people appreciate it. So, you know, if you find a property, tie it up, and do it that way. That's what you could do with $5,000. But I've learned the business too. If you guys aren't real estate agents, you've never done a real estate deal, going out and doing a deal isn't a good idea. It might not be what you want to do. Does that make sense? I mean, what do? You buy the house, and then you realize there's 30 other things that you got to do to get that house sold that you didn't know about, and then you go, man, I'm stuck in this mess. So what I say is, do the deal backwards. You know, help somebody sell a house. Tell someone to help them sell a house for free. And they start doing all those steps backwards, and if you're happy with all those steps that you did backwards, then you take the step to buy it. But everyone does it the wrong way. They buy the house first, then they try to figure out how to sell and make money. They need to sell the house and work backwards on the deal. Work with someone else. Find a real estate broker and say, can I be your assistant? Let me run errands for you. I'll do it for free. And if you do that, you can save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's the best money you make. Does that kind of make sense? Because you don't know what you don't know. You know, how many people like have gone and done something really stupid, saying, man, this is really a dumb idea. I'm going to go do something really, really stupid right now. I have a couple of the guys here I know have done it. But besides the guys, how many people, raise your hand if you've done something stupid, say, this is a really, really bad idea, I'm going to do it. Anyone? You, of course. Okay, me too. Anybody else? That this is a really bad idea, I'm going to do it? How many people in this room have done something dumb? Look back and say, man, that was a really bad idea. Anyone? Everyone? Everyone. So you don't know what you don't know. And that's the same thing with buying a piece of real estate. You don't know. If you've never bought one, don't buy a piece of real estate until you help someone else sell it.
Like a good Mark Twain quote, it says, it's not what you don't know that hurts you, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Yeah, that's true. You don't know what you don't know. And that's why when you say, what's the market going to do? I don't know anymore. You know? Yes, ma'am?
What type of technology do you use, like as far as software applications?
I don't use any smart people stuff. Seriously, I was on the board with the largest provider of information in the real estate industry, and he gets up there and talks about his billion-dollar company, and they say, so, Mr. Buttross, what do you use, and what do you think about our technology? And I went after every one of this room, I said, look, if any of you need this technology to decide whether you should buy or sell a piece of property, you should not be buying and selling a piece of property. If you've got to ask somebody else, is this a good deal, you have no business doing it. You just need to know. So educate yourself and read, but you just have to know in your gut, not from getting an appraisal on something, because that appraiser doesn't know. Your real estate agent doesn't know. How many doctors have relied on their real estate agents to say help them find a duplex? You know, ask your real estate agent if they even own a duplex. That doctor's got $1 million saved up, the real estate agents live in an apartment complex. Nothing against real estate agents, but it's like, why are people asking someone about real estate investments when they've never owned a real estate investment? And that person might be giving them, 9 times out of 10, is giving them honest advice, but it might not be right. I'm giving all you guys my honest advice. I might not be right. I mean, there's a good chance I'm not right. I mean, I've just gotten lucky 4,000 times. You know? So, I mean, I'm just saying, it is what it is. You know? So, study, do it. If you're not a realtor, be an assistant in a real estate office, do whatever they ask you to do. That education is worth a fortune. Get your license and do it. Do it with somebody else's money. And then you help someone buy and sell a house, you go, man, I'm so glad that wasn't me. You know, if you help someone else buy and sell a house and you make a bunch of money and you got a good track record, and it wasn't just because the market took off, you know, then do it. You know, people go, David, describe a long-term investment. I said a long-term investment is a short-term investment that went to hell. You know? Oh, this is a long-term investment. That means he's been losing money for 3 to 5 years on that. It's a long-term investment, yeah. If you can't buy it today and sell it tomorrow, do not do it. I think the market's going up. Do not do it. If you can't flip the contract for $10,000, don't even consider buying the property. Yes, sir?
Do you think there's any opportunity still in either the commercial market or in multifamily residential?
What is your question? What are you really asking?
I guess, you know, cap rates. I mean, like, you know, what's a respectable cap rate outside of Austin?
No. There's so much big money chasing deals that you can't compete. You know, why do you want to compete with someone bigger, smarter than you? Why do you want to play sports against someone who's bigger, stronger, and faster than you? You know, if I was 6'5" and I said, you want to play ball? You're like, no. If I was 6'5", 300 pounds, I said, hey, let's wrestle. No. Don't compete with someone bigger, stronger, faster, and smarter than you. And everybody's bigger, stronger, and faster, and smarter than me. So don't compete with them. I don't. You know, I'm a big fish, but they're fish way, way, way bigger than me. You know, a mistake, step on me by mistake, and I'll be done. You know? So don't compete with the big guys. You can't compete with free money. You know? The prices in Austin are so high, and this guy who just vanished, maybe it's not even for real, Mr. I live at 4%, notice he's not here right now. You know, you can't compete with 4% money. And that's driving the prices up, and eventually that 4% money is not going to be there. Don't compete on big commercial deals. If you can't figure out what it is that you're doing special to make this property make money, don't do it. You know, the thing that I'm doing special is I'm buying stuff for cash, and I'm owner financing, I'm taking some risk, but I'm getting a great deal when I buy it. Their payments are $300 or $400 a month to owner, rents are $500 a month. There's just huge, ridiculous profit margin, huge safety net, and it's a win-win deal. It's a win for that person to make their payment to me every month. So you got to figure out, what do you do that makes it special? If you're an artist and you can make something look pretty, you know, go do that. But you got to figure out, what do you bring to the table that's special that someone else doesn't do it? And it doesn't mean everyone needs to do real estate. But if you can do something special, don't do it. You have to have a competitive advantage. You have to have some competitive edge. So be really, really careful. The Austin market is really pricey. There are lots of good deals on it. You can make a lot of money doing it. But you got to be really smart. You got to be really focused. And you got to stay really on top of it. So be really careful. There are lots of ways to make money in real estate. But be careful buying your first house. I probably wasn't supposed to be talking like that, but anyway, you want to really, really, really be careful. Yes, sir?
What mistakes did you make on your first house?
I didn't. I have my dad.
Mistake free?
You know, at the time, we made really good decisions. But looking at what we do now, would we do it that way again?
And we took a huge risk. We were buying when the market was just going up, straight up. But I got nervous and sold out after I made a reasonable amount, and then it just came right down within a few months. So I was just very lucky. I'd have lost everything. So the secret to real estate is cash flow. Whatever you do, it has to be cash flow.
And you don't know what you don't know. So we thought we were doing great. We were doing great. But there's so many ways to do it better. 2 years ago, I thought I was doing it great. Now I got a new way of doing something that blows the door off anything else that I was doing. I'm buying and selling 100 houses a month. You know, what I said to the universe, you know, 3 months ago, I said, I'm going to do 1,000 deals this year. And someone said, how are you going to do this? I said, I don't know, but I'm going to do it. And I bought 80 in December. I bought 80 in January. I bought 80 in February. And we're selling 40 a month, 3 a day, 2 a day, something like that. Just something ridiculous. And I just decided to do it, and it happened. And you just stay focused, and you know, if you focus your mind on something, like you write it down, and you write baby steps on how you're going to do it, you know, yeah, 1,000, who can do 1,000 deals? And I said, well, that's ridiculous. But I can do 80 a month. I can do 2 a day, 3 a day. So if I can get 6 people helping me, and each one of them does, you know, 4 deals a month, that adds up to 24, and then I can sell a couple myself. So if you start, you know, how to eat an elephant, it's one bite at a time. You know, so if you can start breaking stuff, how do you make $1 million? Well, make them $1. Once you figure out how to make $1, you can make $2. And it becomes easier and easier. I mean, when I was younger, I wanted to be a millionaire. And when I was 18 years old, I knew I was going to be a millionaire. I knew that if I put my $32,000 in a CD at 14.98% interest, in 30 years, compounded interest rate would be $1 million. So I knew if I put that money in the bank, I sat on my butt, I'd be a millionaire in 30 years. So I was already a millionaire in my head. And so that was about, how do I get there faster? I go, if I can make an extra 10 grand a year on my investments, you know, I can be there that much faster. I can be there in 20 years. And so then I just kind of said, okay, I'm a millionaire, and I just got there quicker and quicker. And then when I was 25, I was a millionaire. You know, I got that one deal where I bought 50 houses that had 10 grand of equity in it. $500,000, it got me there pretty quick. So it's like, you know, you want to set your goals and then break them up into reasonable, you know, reasonable tasks. I mean, who here had a VCR growing up? What time was on your VCR? Yeah, 12, flashing. You know, no one would even set their VCR clock. All of us. You know, oh, we'll do it tomorrow. We'll do it tomorrow. No, you got to write all this stuff down. Do one thing a day. You know, I have all these meetings with people. You give out business cards. People don't even do a follow-up phone call. So the first thing I do is I always text everybody I meet. Hey, how's it going? Send them a quick email. That might be all I do, but it's one more step that everybody else doesn't do. You know, whenever I have a meeting with someone and I try to inspire them and talk to them about something, I said, I want you to send me an email and a takeaway from this meeting and write down what you're going to do today and what your goals are, and at least just write it down. And, you know, just that one step makes a big difference. That's kind of one of the things that I talk about in my book, too, you know? And it's like you can do anything, you just can't do everything. And everything that you want, you do have to sacrifice something else to get that other thing. And why is everybody here? You know, why are you guys all here? Why do you guys all get up in the morning and go to work? You know, I got married late, about, I guess, 10 years ago. I was 35 years old. I lived in a big, huge house with gates and pillars, and I was having parties all the time. I was enjoying being single, and you know, I'm not sure if girls like short, balding guys, or maybe the house had something to do with it. I'm not sure what it was, but I was having a really good time being single. You know, and then one day I started thinking. Yeah, I started thinking to myself. I'm like, you know, this is great, but when I'm 100 years old and I'm lying on my deathbed and I got a gajillion dollars in the bank and a bunch of good stories, what am I going to wish for on that day right before my heart has its last beat? And I started thinking about it. I said, you know what? If I had $1 billion, I'd give everything to have one more minute with my wife, my kids, my grandkids, and the people in my life that I really love. And I realized at that moment when I was 35, I realized the only way to get that 5 minutes in the future is to start right now. Does that kind of make sense? So you need to plan on where you want to be in the end, and then start that day. And a couple days later, I ran into my wife, and we met, fell for each other, got married, started having kids, like right away, because she's really cute. We got pregnant twice the first year we were married, the math works. And I just want to make sure she didn't change her mind on me. We got 4 kids, and I'm a lot happier than she is. But, you know, on that day, I'm going to have my, hopefully, wife, kids, for sure the kids, so I'm not going to give them any money until I die. I'm going to have my wife, my kids, and my grandkids there where I want them. But does that really make sense? And that's something all of you need to really think about is, where do you really want to be and what really, really matters? You know, at the end of the day, we're all in the same place. You know, so what I want to do is I want to change people's lives. I want to make the world a better place. You know, there's only so much I can do to do it, but if I can inspire you guys to do the same thing, then I feel like I've kind of accomplished my goal. And so when I do a deal, I try to do a win-win deal. And if you do win-win deals, it helps your karma. And if I ever trip and fall, I know I got somebody there to catch me and help, you know, build me back up. So I love turning renters into homeowners. That's what I'm passionate about. You know, I was buying and selling office buildings and making a couple $1 million a deal. That was great, but what good's a bunch of money in the bank? It doesn't make me any happier. You know, everyone in America eats at the same restaurants, drives pretty much the same cars, does pretty much the same stuff, you know, 80% of the time. You know, it's about doing the right thing, and you really want to do a deal. You've got to work harder to do a win-win deal, but in the long run, you become so much more successful, and it forces you to make the right decisions. I mean, you can never go wrong doing the right thing. Does that make sense? So talk to your customers, find out what they need, and give them a true value. Make a fair profit doing that. And if you do those things, in the long run, you're going to be so much more successful. But find out what really, really matters to you in your life. And it's not about money. It's like being good at what you do. And the money is just a byproduct of being good at what you do. Does that make sense? So anyway, any other questions?
I have a quick question about one deal.
Okay.
Say you have the option, how much you choose between renting a property or selling it owner finance?
Renting it out as a buy and hold?
Yeah, like I can say, for example, I can buy a property subject to.
Right.
What factors might you look at to hold on to that house as a rental or to sell it as a subject?
Be really, really careful in the subject to business. Okay? You know, you're basically putting property under contract, and someone else has a mortgage on it, and the bank has the ability to call your note due. And everything's good when it's good, but whenever it gets bad and interest rates go up, you know those banks are going to start calling those notes due. And you don't want to create a problem you can't solve. I thought about doing the subject to model because if a couple banks call a couple $100,000 notes due, I can write the check and solve the problem. But the problem is you don't want to build your house on sand. It's a slippery slope, you know? So you can handle 1 or 2 deals going bad, but what happens if a bunch of them go bad? So that's why I don't, you know, banks say, hey, we'll do a balloon loan in 3 years and we'll renew it, don't worry about it. Well, what if they don't? You know, so if you build your house on sand, you want to be really careful with the subject to deal. You know? And what happens, like, you know, husband and wife might get married and maybe they get divorced and you still have a subject to deal. Well, someone's upset about that their credit is still tied up with that loan. They call their bank and say, hey, why do I still have this loan? I already sold this house. You know, then the bank finds out about it and they get mad. And the person you sold it to can sue you because the house gets foreclosed on, you can't stop it. You know, so you want to be really, really careful when you do subject to deals. So it's a little bit risky, and I know there are a lot of real estate clubs that preach subject to deals. Just be really careful doing it because, you know, you're creating a little bit of a ticking time bomb. And what happens if you build your business on that and 2 of those time bombs go off, you're going to be up a little bit of a creek. You know, but it's really tempting, and I've been so tempted to do it. especially with interest rates as low as they are,
Well,
you know. But
yeah.
you got to be
I guess
really.
if you don't have the capital to begin with to buy the house, so
Yeah.
cash first of all, then you know that's.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk you out of, you know, you can buy one for 100, put 5 down and sell for 125 with 20 down and put 20 grand in your pocket and make $150 a month positive cash flow, and that's just a ridiculous amount of money. But just be really, really careful to it. Make sure you have a good attorney reviewing it, and just be really, really careful, because you know you get tempted, and that's what really brings a lot of people down too. Is you know what happens? They start ratcheting up their lifestyle, and so you know everyone gets to hear, right? You know, you get a little bit of money, like, oh, I can afford a bigger car payment, I can afford this, I can afford this. So then all of a sudden you start increasing your fixed expenses, and then you're stuck. You know what I mean? When the market goes down, your fixed expenses are still here, but you don't have any revenue. And then what happens? People start doing stuff they're not supposed to do. You know, like, well, I'll just rob Peter to pay Paul, but I'll pay him back. You know what I mean? And then you end up, I'll do another subject to deal that's not a good deal, where I'll sell someone a house for 130, even though it's only worth 120. You know what I mean? And then once you start giving people a bad deal, then they start calling attorneys, and then, you know, the whole thing can be a really big mess. So what you want to do, I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't want to say don't do them, but if you do them, don't do them for very long, and figure out a way to be as deleveraged as possible, you know? So when I started off doing, I was 70% loan to value, which was crazy conservative for a real estate investor. You know, $10 million of assets, $7 million of debt, $3 million net worth, I was killing it. And I started speaking to like real estate clubs and stuff, and I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, shoot, look at how conservative I am. I'm like 30% loan to value. I'm like, well, what about if the market turned on me? What's my net worth? 3 million, right? 10 million in assets, 7 million debt, $3 million net worth. I'm pretty cool, right? Well, if the market turns, just 10%. You know, that's after a market's gone up for years and years and years, up 30%. So say it comes down 10%. So instead of having 10 million, I got 9 million, right? And then if I want to sell all my stuff, I got 8% transaction costs. Now I got 8 million. Oh, well, I've got 100 properties. They all have to sit on the market for 2 or 3 months to sell. All of a sudden I got 0 million. So your 70% loan to value can go to 0 like that. And you got to sell the house a little bit below market to be able to move it. So you got to be really, really careful with leverage. I mean, leverage can help you get rich quick, like with your example, but you got to be really careful. It doesn't take much of a market correction to wipe you totally out. You know, and right now I'm at like 20% loan to value. You know, but because I'm a little concerned, I got 4 kids at home too. And that's the other thing too, is you know, you can't be as risky. You know, I was lucky, I was single at 35. So I could hit it as hard as I want, I could take on all the risk, because if something happened, I could rebuild it again. And I could live on somebody's couch. But if you're married, you got a wife and kids, you know, you got to be really, really careful with the risk, because you know, some people, you just can't afford to take those bets. So just be really, really careful and conservative, you know?
Another quick twist
Yes,
on
sir.
that. Say if you had a couple of properties, you own them outright, you're renting them. Would you when would you consider selling those seller finance? You know,
So what I would do is, in Austin, the market's so high right now, and there's so much capital chasing it, I would not sell anything in Austin under finance. I would sell anything in Austin for cash, because you can get cash, and it's a really good, efficient market. So I sell owner finance because I'm a really inefficient market where there are no buyers. So when there are no buyers, you can buy stuff for cash for nothing. And you offer owner financing, there are buyers coming out of the woodwork to sell it. So I do it because it creates efficiency in the market. But when you have an efficient market like Austin, don't sell anything owner finance. Because what do you do if somebody owes you 200 grand on your house and the market goes down to 150? They're going to give it back, even if they like you.
Yeah, okay.
And then you lose 50 grand, and you get no control over the asset. So in Austin, Texas, don't sell anything owner finance. Okay? Sell it for cash, get out. Anyone that's owned rent houses for 3 or 4 years, you've had so much appreciation. Say thank you, God, take some money off the table. If you want to play it again, play it with cash, totally unleveraged. And then if the market goes down, you lose 20%, but you don't lose everything. Yes, sir?
Well, one of the things that mitigates against that is the capital gains. If you order finance it, you can. What do you
Talking
think
like
about
that smart guy over there. Let's hold this asset, because if we hold it for 1 year, it's a long-term capital gain, even though the market's going down.
No, well, you know, that's a good point, but suppose I don't mind having the house back. See, my exit strategy was when I was owner's finance man, if I got it back, I was gonna be able to pay the mortgage anyway on a wrap.
Yeah, I wouldn't sell anything owner financed in Austin, Texas. That it's an efficient market, there's no reason to. You know, if you'll get 3 or 4 or 5% more for owner financing, but it's not worth the risk. If you sell it, you get the asset off your books, you put some money in your pocket, you pay off some debt, you're good to go again. There's no, I mean, I probably owner financed 1,500 houses, 2,000 houses in Austin. But I started doing it in 1990. You know, and prices went up, but you won't see David Buttross on, well, I did owner finance a condo in Lakeway the other day. But it was a soft market and I couldn't use it, so I used it as a tool to liquidate the asset. I didn't mind holding it because we're into it for like $125 a foot, so I felt like, you know, that's safe. But everything is so pricey in Austin. And I think Lakeway is a good deal. If you guys want to look for deals to flip houses, go to Lakeway. You can buy houses for $100 a foot in Lakeway that are nice, and the lake's up. And I don't understand why Lakeway's so cheap, but I think people don't think about Lakeway as being in the city of Austin. But Austin is so dang expensive, and yeah, everyone's getting rich in Austin, but it won't last forever. You know, it's like musical chairs. You know, once the music stops, you know, some people are gonna be left holding the bag. And Austin, you know, and that's why I like to buy in other cities, because I see what I can buy in other cities for nothing. And I'm like, Austin is so dang expensive. It's only getting more expensive, and all it takes is one hiccup internationally where these where these tech companies, you know, are no longer worth $100 billion, and they quit paying college kids $100 grand a year coming out of college to be computer programmers. Like, oh, she left. But you know, all those computer programmers are making $100 grand a year. You can outsource computer programming to India and to China. How are they keeping those salaries so high? So eventually, you know, I've had employees that worked in other countries, and you know, eventually those wages are going to come down a lot. And once those wages come down and all these kids aren't making $100 grand a year coming out of college, you're going to see a lot of downward pressure in Austin. Yes, sir?
I would say look at San Antonio. If you're looking for someplace close, you can find it still very cheap.
San Antonio has a lot of good values.
A lot of good values.
And I met a guy 2 weeks ago that I have a race car and he wanted to borrow it. And he was from Mexico. And he said he's building the first Class A office building in San Antonio in 15 years. So you're right, it's a different market. And that's right around the corner from us. And Dallas has huge pockets that haven't appreciated.